Welcome to part two of the Communication and Consultation Specialist course. We're going to talk now about your communication style and temperaments and personalities, followed by pricing, and then we'll wrap it up with photographs, before and after images of before and after of consultations. People say they're either left brain or right brain. Right brain people are creative and artsy. Left brain people are organized in detail. You might have a crisscross in both, a bridge. Some people are strictly right or left brain. And the good news is both types of right brain and left brain people are successful in staging. And I do think it requires a balance of both in order to run a successful business. But depending on who you are, you can be successful, which is great. What I want to talk about is temperament and personalities. The goal is to understand who we are in order to adapt ourselves to better fit with our client based on who they are. Temperament is a basic inherited style, whereas personality is acquired on top of the temperament. So a temperament is aspects of a personality like extrovert or introvert, and it's regarded as innate or inborn and is not learned. It's not a learned behavior. So you're born this way. If you know that you like being around crowds, you don't, you're introverted, extroverted, other different qualities and things that are part of your temperament is what you're born with. Then personality, sort of an extension of the temperament, and it's what we observe, what we see and observe in people. Personality traits can be adapted or changed depending on the circumstance. There's lots of different tests to figure out who you are, your type of personality, and so forth. And this is one that I like because it's simple. It's only 4 quadrants: expressive, driver, analytical, and amiable, which are the 4 different personalities or temperaments. So the personalities are here and the temperaments are here. Okay, temperaments are extrovert, introvert, people-oriented, or task-oriented, and then the personalities are expressed by these words here. There's a disc profile that has like 6 different initials you have to remember, and something else that I just saw recently has like 15. Those are too complicated for me to store in my brain at this point, so this to me is easier. So expressive, drivers, analyticals, and amiables. And most people, depending on who you are, you're going to identify with 2 out of the 4 quadrants or 3 out of the 4. You might have traits that fall into all different quadrants, but you're going to be dominant in usually 1 or 2 areas. You'll have your dominant personality in 1 or 2 of the quadrants. And so people are usually a combination of 2 or 3. And so you can be an expressive driver. You could be a driver analytical. You could be an analytical amiable. You could be an amiable expressive. You could be an expressive driver with analyticals. You could even be these 3. You could be these 3: driver, analytical amiable, expressive, etc. So what you can't be in the world of psychology is a crisscross. People are not naturally opposite. If you were to take a test and you came up with equal traits in these crisscross categories, that means one of them is a mask of survival, because nobody naturally falls into all 4 quadrants equally or crisscross. It's just, and that means you grew up in a household where you had to mask your true self to survive in a family where maybe the parents were really dominant and maybe you're actually a strong personality as well, but you had to squelch it because they were the ones that were in control. And then your actual true nature came out when you were on your own. So your parents are here, a driver, very strong personality, temperaments, and you appear amiable, easygoing, and acquiescent because you had to, because your parents were in charge. But as soon as you got out, you're like, I actually like being in charge and I'm going to take charge of my life. And your parents are shocked, thinking, well, we always thought that he or she was so agreeable and easy to get along with, but we had no idea that they actually had the strong part of them because you were never allowed to express it. The other part of that can be when a parent is absent. Let's say a father travels a lot for business, and then the mom, let's say the mom is here, she's an expressive driver, and the father is analytical driver or amiable. And so you got these kids who might naturally be, here, but because the mom is expressive and she encourages that behavior and rewards it in their household growing up, these kids adapt to become like the mom to get approval. That's also a mask of survival. And so, and by the way, this happens in a lot of families. It's not, judgment if that happened in your family. Most people, you do what you need to do to get along, and parents do the best that they can. And, a lot of this information wasn't available years and years ago. So, I have lived through a lot of this. I've seen it in my own families. I've seen it in other people's families. And so To me, it's really fascinating to assess temperaments and personalities. So let me go back to here. An expressive is extroverted. So is a driver. Okay, so these are the outgoing personality temperaments. And then an introvert are the amiables and analyticals. They're more introverted. Amiables and expressives are people-oriented, and a driver and an analytical are task-oriented. So that's how it's been divided up, and it's very true. So these are the extroverts. These people like people, task-oriented, and these are the introverts. So they're quieter, more easygoing, more laid back. These are the ones that are going to be louder, outgoing, feel comfortable in a crowd, etc. So it's important for you to figure out who are you? What type of temperament are you? All right. So when conducting consultations, you'll have a very short period of time to determine your client's temperament and personality and then adjust your delivery and message accordingly. So we think it's just about going into a house and telling a seller what they need to do. It's a lot more than that, and that's why we're paid the way we are. We need to be able to size up the personality or temperament of the seller and then deliver the message according to how they are going to receive it best. That means we have to adjust how we would normally deliver the message, depending on who the client is. And that becomes the challenge. When we fail to do this, the client will not relate to us and they will not like what we say or cooperate with us and do the staging recommendations when we do not adjust for how they need to better receive the information. All right, so how to determine what your temperament or personality is. So an expressive is people-oriented. You're an extrovert, which is your temperament. And your personality, you're going to be talking a lot. You'll use hand gestures a lot. You like to wear bright clothing, which is adapted. But you're attracted to that. You wear bright clothing. You could be messy. You're not usually very organized. You love people. You love to be the life of the party. People love having you at parties because you add that element that everybody, you're a great storyteller and you love being around people. You crave that, and that's part of your genetics. And you also like to be complimented, and there's nothing wrong with that. So people who are expressive like to hear, I love that. That color is great on you. Boy, your hair looks really great today. I love your makeup. I love your outfit. Male or female, they love to be complimented because they are, extroverts and they love people, and that feeds them. And it does not mean that they're conceited or anything like that. That's just part of who they are, that they need to receive compliments. They look good. They're not shallow or insecure. That's just part of who they are. They can come across as scattered and messy or disorganized. So we all have strengths in our temperaments and personalities. There's also personality things that come out that are weaknesses. And so if you are an expressive and you know that you're not necessarily the most organized person, you need to work on that because you cannot run a business and not be organized with paperwork and being able to find things. Otherwise, you're going to fail. It's going to be really tough for you. So an extrovert, expressive, who doesn't like doing that piece might actually hire a bookkeeper or somebody to help keep them organized as their business can afford it, because that's not your favorite thing to do. However, in a business, it needs to get done, right? So it's good for us to learn what our good qualities are, and then also to understand our challenge areas and then work to overcome those challenge areas by putting in an effort and so forth that we may not super enjoy, or maybe hiring it out to somebody else. A driver is a bottom line person. They get to the point. They're no fuss, no frills. They may wear black. So a pure driver isn't going to have any, bright colors and so forth. They might wear red as a power color, but usually black because it's practical. They're big picture people. So they like to get the overall picture. They don't want to get down on what they call the weeds. And so a 30,000 foot view, not down in the weeds. They're quick and decisive. Expressives are also impulsive. So they're not going to take a long time to make a decision. And a driver will also be quick and decisive. They're extrovert and they are a task-oriented individual, usually type A. They have a lot going on. They may believe they have the answers to everything, and they can have the answers. I mean, they're very smart. They are used to running the show, and they can come across as impatient or bossy in their weaknesses. So I know you can't see me, but gestures and so forth will indicate temperament and personality. So we're going to talk about that coming up. But these people just want to cut to the chase. What's the bottom line? They don't want to hear a bunch of stories. Get to the point. An analytical, like a pure analytical, very detail oriented. They need facts and details just in life to be able to make a decision. They like information. Information to them equates to power, not in a bossy way, but just they crave information. They love to read. The analyticals are very sensitive. So the arts, people might think an expressive is the artist, and expressive can be artistic with the colors and so forth, but any art that requires drawing from what we call angst, coming from the inside, an expression of who we are on the inside, that's an analytical. Musicians, analytical for the most part. A lot of artists and sculptors and so forth are going to be analyticals because they're drawing from something from within themselves that they're expressing in their artwork. They're natural skeptics. They are very intelligent, and they have to think about the information to process before they make a decision. So they're not going to make a quick decision. They also believe they know everything, and they usually are right. It's, everything's black and white, by the way, to an analytical. There's not a lot of gray area. So it's either right or wrong, black or white. And I'll use an example of my dad, who was an analytical. He was the psychiatrist. He graduated high school at 16. He got full scholarships at Harvard, Yale, and Stanford for medical school and so forth. Did his undergrad and went on to medical school. Super bright man. And almost like pure analytical. So I remember asking for directions. This is before MapQuest on your phones and so forth, or Google Maps. I remember asking for directions. I say, Dad, how do I get from, here to here? And so he drew this map. He goes, this is the way you want to go. So then I said, well, do I have to go that way? What if I go this way? And I drew a different direction. He goes, no, that's the wrong way. So then I started messing with him just because I knew it would annoy him. I was an adult. But anyway, I said, well, what difference does it make? Why can't I go my way if I still make it to the destination? Then I feel like I've achieved my goal. And he's like, but that's the wrong way, because this is the right way to go. That's the wrong way to go because, it takes you more time or whatever it is. And so that's literally how he thinks. There's only one right way to accomplish something based on his intelligence and what he knows about, the situation and so forth. They're going to tell you what they believe is right. So they can come across as arrogant because they are knowledgeable. And then they're also, since they're very sensitive, they're not real emotive people, not that they don't laugh and so forth. These are the people that have the sarcastic wit, by the way. They can tell jokes and so forth, but they may have that sarcasm with them. So, those are the analyticals, very detail oriented. They are introverts and process or task oriented versus extrovert and people oriented. And then the last one, amiables. These are the people that are reserved and quiet, not quite, but quiet. They're likable. They're very family centric. They don't make a decision fast either. They have to think about it. And it's not necessarily based on facts and figures. It's based on motivation and disruption in their lives. They are introverted and they are people oriented. So they like to talk to people. They just don't necessarily like a huge crowd. These people are really great one-on-one, as are analyticals. They're going to be great one-on-one. An expressive loves a crowd. A driver does okay in a crowd too. They can talk to a crowd. They don't do it to be life of the party, but they like sharing information and being in charge. So an amiable is introverted and people-oriented, and they can come across as lazy or unmotivated. And they can be messy. Again, not necessarily like an expressive messy, where they just are so disorganized, but they just don't care sometimes about picking things up. That's just not their motivation. They'd rather make a meal or do something with their family or some other activity. So amiables are liked by everybody. They get along with everybody. They sit on boards of companies. They can be presidents of companies. So it's not that these people are underachievers at all, but their natural temperament is to not rock the boat. And we're going to talk about what this means for staging. So how do you determine what your client is? An expressive, when you meet that client, they're going to be upbeat, possibly in focus. You have to kind of keep them on task. They're going to use hand gestures. They might be wearing bright clothes. Their house will be messy or disorganized. They're going to be impulsive. They're going to want to tell stories and tangents. The house probably will not be organized, and there'll be lots of clutter and possibly little projects they've started but never finished. A driver will be time sensitive. The bottom line, get to the point, no fuss, no frills. What are you here for? Tell me what I need to do. They could be wearing black. They're big picture people. So you don't want to be telling them a lot of stories and so forth. They're quick and decisive. A driver is the only one that does the karate chop motion in the hands. So if you have your palm facing up to the ceiling and of your left hand and take your right hand and kind of chop across it where your fingers meet your palm, like a karate chop. The only temperament that ever does this hand motion is a driver. So if you catch yourself doing that, you're a driver. I do it. I'm a driver. And if I see a client doing that, I know, okay, this person's a driver. And they don't even realize they're doing it, but that's a typical cut to the chase. What's the bottom line? House is probably fairly organized with systems for efficiency if they're a pure driver, but it really depends. They could be married to an expressive, and so you're not going to necessarily see that. You might have to determine husband and wife or significant others, depending on who the partners are. You could have two different temperaments, and you have to speak to both of them, which becomes extra challenging. And analytical, of course, is detail-oriented, needs the facts and details. You need to be very specific. They're naturally skeptic. Their arms could be crossed. When you first come up, they could have their arms crossed because they're really not sure why you're there and what it is you're going to share with them that they don't already know. And so they might be kind of skeptical. And they also don't like change. Change can be hard for an analytical. So they also might speak in a more quiet tone. So when I am dealing with an analytical or amiable, my natural voice might be kind of loud. And so I have to soften it and I have to slow down my cadence of how I talk, so that I don't talk too quickly and overwhelm them. And I need to ask a lot of questions. The house will probably be very organized with labels, very tidy. Again, they believe there's one right way to do any task, and so they could challenge you on something. So you have to have the information and details and facts to back up whatever you're telling them they need to do. A place for everything and everything in its place. So a purely analytical household, you're not going to have a lot of clutter out, is my guess. But again, they could be married to somebody who likes to have a lot of stuff out. And then an amiable, again, reserved and quiet. They're likable, family-centric, may have their arms crossed as well, because they need to know if they can trust you. So this one needs to know, what are they going to tell me that I don't already know? What am I going to learn here? This one is, who's this person that I'm letting into my house? Can I trust them? So you're going to win them over, again, talking slowly. They can be messy. Again, it's not because they're expressive. It's because it's not their favorite thing to do housework. They have other things that are priority to them. They can seem unmotivated. And of course, they want an easy process. They're not a quick decision maker. And so you don't want to keep pushing. Give them the time they need to make a decision and, keep reaching out to them. House can be disorganized. Their time is for their family. They do not have a natural need for organization. So they're very family centric, which is going to come back into play as far as how we handle sharing what they need to do. So now we determine what your client is, how to adjust your message yourself to meet your client's temperament. So you have an expressive seller. You're going to share about the visual outcome and fun process. If you're also naturally expressive, you may need to listen up more, because expressives tend to talk a lot. And if you're dealing with an expressive client, you need to take the lead so you stay on track. So you need to listen to them, but you also need to take the lead and keep things on track. Otherwise, you're going to be there way too long. And because you've given a flat rate for your time, you're going to end up losing money because of all the fun you're having. Although you may not care, because expressive love to have fun. And if it's not fun, it's not worth it, is their motto. So the visual outcome, your house looks so great. And I just can't wait to see how it turns out. They just gobble that up. If you're naturally a driver dealing with an expressive seller, you need to lighten up a little bit, because drivers can be very serious and want to just plow through something. Well, you got to give yourself extra time, because expressive wants to tell you stories. They want to share things with you about what they have in their home. And so we need to get rid of the impatient part of ourselves and listen and actually be interested in what they're sharing, so that they don't feel like they're just talking to a wall. So you have to engage with that. And that can be sometimes really hard, because I'll tell you, as a driver, I'm a driver expressive with some analytical. And my husband is also a driver with expressive and analytical. And I think I probably have more driver than he does. But, in our marriage, we're not opposites. We're opposites attract. We're not opposites. And so we're both extroverted. We like people. And what we struggle with, of course, would be control. Who's going to control the situation or whatever. So we have to, compromise and acquiesce. And so for me, though, because John likes to tell stories, he'll come to me, and let's say I'm busy working, I'm productive, I'm working, and he'll want to come show me something. And so sometimes I just cannot take the time to listen to the entire story. And so I will say, what is the outcome? I'll actually ask him, tell me the end of the story first. This is terrible. Tell me the end of the story or what really happened, and then I'll ask him to fill the details in. Because a true expressive will take you on a journey. I mean, they'll want to tell you all about everything, and it's not just like a straight line story where you know there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's a beginning, and then there's tangents, and they're off over here. Then they get back, and then there's the middle, and they're kind of bringing it, and then they go off again, and then they finally get to the end. And I don't know, and a half an hour, 20 minutes has gone by, and I'm just thinking like, what is the point of this whole story? Because I got to get back to work. That's a driver. And so when you're dealing with the client, or I'll even share with a significant other, you need to neutralize that part of yourself at times, because that's not an attractive trait to be impatient and just want to get to the bottom line, because this person has a need to tell stories. And so when we're meeting people according to where their needs are as a client or a significant other, we meet their needs, not based on ours. They have that need to be able to share. So I just have to bite my tongue sometimes and listen. And the stories are interesting. It's just sometimes it's for me, it's a time factor. And so if you know that about yourself, adapt, right? If you're naturally analytical and you're dealing with an expressive, you're going to need to loosen up, because analyticals can be wound tight and come across as uptight sometimes. And with the expressive, you need to be more animated. So you'll need to, laugh and maybe gesture with your hands and raise your voice and so forth to kind of engage with the expressive. And the challenge can be the expressives can seem superficial to an analytical because you guys are opposites. So whereas you like to be complimented for who you are as a person, your internal qualities, the expressive likes to be complimented for the external qualities that they have, and they can be seen as shallow or conceited for that. And so it's hard sometimes for an analytical to get an expressive and vice versa. So they're very much into the outward appearance, so you need to compliment them and again talk about how great the house is going to be. Expressive really don't care about details and facts. They just want to know you have a plan, you need to keep them on track, but they don't want to get down in the weeds either. And if you're naturally and amiable, you'll need to liven up a bit, speak up, talk a little faster, and remain in control of the appointment and provide guidance for the homeowner. So again, the expressive is going to naturally be a little scattered possibly, and you're going to have to keep them on track and be able to stick to your time schedule to be able to get through the property. And since an amiable is naturally more laid back, it's easy for other people to take the lead. And so you have to be the leader because you're the one that has expertise. You're the one that knows what to tell the homeowner, what to do in order to get their house prepared for sale. You cannot give up that professional control, no matter what temperament you are. If the seller is a driver personality, give them the big picture and let them know you can help. What's the bottom line? So if you're naturally expressive, you're going to need to stay focused and make your points because drivers don't have any time for you. They're impatient. So whereas if you have an expressive client and you're a driver personality, you are letting them share and so forth and indulging that part of them to a point. When you're dealing with the driver seller, they don't want that. You need to stop talking as an expressive and just get to the point and share things that are meaningful, that are on task, that have a direction as far as what you're recommending to the client as far as getting the house sold, but you don't want to be telling too many stories. And you want relatability without annoying or irritating the driver temperament. And if you're naturally a driver, you're going to need to establish professional control with this person. In fact, everybody does, because the driver's natural need is to control the situation. So in expressive, you need to establish control. You do that with your expertise and your knowledge and by sharing things that are important to get the house ready for sale. You're going to, that'll help qualify you. The second you start going off on a tangent, that driver's going to take over. If you're naturally a driver with another driver, that's a fun experience, but you need to establish professional control and get to the bottom line. And there's this relatability, but you don't want to be battling for power. There can be power struggle with the driver that's a seller that's a driver who thinks that they know everything and they're going to take control of the process and you're not going to tell them what to do. So again, you need to always explain the reasons why behind the recommendation. If you're naturally analytical, you'll need to speed up your pace. The driver does not care about all the little details, which is true. They're big picture people. We're going to put all this all in a report for you. It's going to be summarized. You'll have your step-by-step things that you need to do in order to get your house prepared for sale, give them the plan and the why, and then move on. And always take it back to the return on investment. The reason we're doing this is to get you the best offer in the quickest time, because it's the driver is all about the bottom line return on investment. And if you're naturally amiable, you will need to establish professional control and speak up. from the very beginning. Shake their hand, or I guess today we couldn't do that. You could bump elbows or whatever. If the driver senses he or she can take over, they will. And you'll need to act against your natural temperament, which is to acquiesce and be strong without being bossy. So you might want to role play. And it's great to role play. And again, most of the time when you're meeting more than one homeowner, if it's a couple, you're going to have two different temperaments you're dealing with. You're going to have to size them up. You could have an analytical who's married to an expressive, or a driver and an amiable, or these different combinations. So it's fascinating, and it's necessary in order to adapt who we are for the message. And there's usually one of the couple, if you're dealing with a couple, will establish themselves as the dominant one that you need to make sure to direct your messaging and your information to, but don't neglect the other person who might be quiet. Don't neglect them. Make sure to always include them and ask if they have any questions and so forth. Because if you're dealing with a driver and maybe they're married to an amiable, and you sort of focus all your attention here and you're not really acknowledging this person, because this person needs to have trust with you, and because this person's very family centric, when you leave, that person's going to say, I didn't like that stager. They never even said anything to me. They don't really, I didn't feel like they even heard what I wanted, or was what my concerns were, because you ignored them because they're so quiet. Okay, so make sure that you're bringing everybody into the fold. If you have an analytical seller, be ready with the details and facts. If you're naturally expressive, you'll need to speak slower. Ask questions to ensure the client understands the recommendations. You need to soften your voice and give the client time to process your recommendations. So watch their body language. Know your data and numbers, the facts. Analyticals are usually really smart and informed. So don't try to snow them with, if they ask you questions about the market and you don't have the right answer, don't make it up, because they'll figure out that you don't know what you're talking about. So just say, that's a great question. I can get you some information. I'll be happy to follow up with you. So with an analytical, before you move on to another area, is there anything else that I've shared that you need me to clarify? Do you have any questions on any of the recommendations I've made so far? Ask that of them, so that you have an opportunity to have them share with you if they have any questions. And if they say no, great, but never assume that they don't have questions just because they're not speaking up. If you're naturally a driver, you need to establish professional control and know your details as well. This client wants a detailed plan, and they want the why behind the recommendations, so we can't just rush through the recommendations. We need to take the time that an analytical needs to understand everything and to clarify. So just like with the expressive who likes to tell stories, you might need to allocate more time for an analytical, a true analytical, because they might ask a lot of questions and they need the details. And should you not provide that to them, they're not going to have the motivation for why they need to do things, and therefore they probably won't implement the recommendations. And that's not the goal. And if you're naturally analytical, manage the time, because it's going to be easy to get caught up in the details and the process. So you need to be the one managing the appointment and not let this person take you down into the weeds. And then if you're naturally an amiable, be decisive with an analytical and use your data to back up any statements or claims. You can actually, any of us can bring handouts and things that have statistics and so forth. If you don't want to memorize all that, just bring it in a handout that you can reference, that you can show them or leave behind with them. Anything like that is totally fine. You're both more soft-spoken, so that works well, so they don't feel like they're being yelled at. And you're very calm, and so are they. So this is probably a very quiet appointment versus dealing with an expressive or a driver. But again, if it's not just an individual and there's a second person you're dealing with, you probably will have somebody that are in these two other temperaments that you're going to need to also address. Now, if you're an amiable seller, you need to ask about their family and develop rapport early, because that establishes trust. If you're naturally and expressive, you need to speak slower and ask questions to ensure the client understands their recommendations. They're not about the details as much as the process. Soften your voice, give the client time to process the recommendations and get their buy-in, and then share how you're there to help them be sensitive to their family issues. So they're very family-centric. So it could be the family issues could be where the kids do homework, or their school schedule, or the disruption that could possibly happen in the home while it's for sale. And so you're there to help them. So if they're just feeling like overwhelmed, like I don't think I can get this place packed up in time, or this is a lot to take on, and amiable is a great natural way for us to get back in the door, because they do want help. And so we establish trust with them, sincere rapport with them, and then we let them know that we're here to help them. But they're all about minimal disruption to their process and their family. very family centric. They want to make sure it's safe, and then they need to trust you. If you're naturally a driver, you need to soften your approach so you don't steamroll this client, because amiables appear very laid back. Natural inclination for a driver is to just push right through. And because they are easygoing and laid back, we just take charge and we just roll right over them. So they're more passive and appear easy to push around. But if you come on too strong, there's no relatability and they will not want to work with you. So you got to show emotions as a driver. Make sure you show emotions if you're a pure driver. I show emotions because I'm expressive. So I laugh and I use my hands and stuff like that. But people who are pure driver, and I've come across a few of these as clients, it's very funny. They just cut to the chase. They don't want the details. They don't want the fluff. They don't relate to stories. They just want to, what's the bottom line? So when you're dealing with an amiable, you do have to show emotions as a driver. And they appear easy to push around, amiables. And they're agreeable to a point. You push, and at some point, they don't even tell you that they're done. They just basically, like, in their head, they go, I'm done. I'm not dealing with this anymore. And they get up and they walk away, or they walk out, wherever the situation is, and you see the back of their head, and you never get a second chance with that amiable. They made up their mind and they're out of there. So they appear easy to push around, but be very careful because they really are not total pushovers. If you're naturally analytical, they just don't like conflict. That's the key. If you're naturally analytical, keep the client on track. Provide process that works for them, but don't get too detailed because they get overwhelmed. An amiable gets overwhelmed if there's just too much going on. This client is people-oriented, not process. Remember, an amiable is people-oriented, not the process of what works. Talk about the family and be willing to show emotions and also come alongside them to help. And then if you're naturally an amiable, because you're both more laid back, you'll have to be the one setting the time goals and holding this client accountable. Someone has to be the leader, and as the expert, it needs to be you because you know what needs to be done. And then, if you're not super motivated to help pack up their stuff and so forth either, you can coordinate that. You can bring movers in. There's other people you can bring in that like doing that. That's not something that you enjoy as an amiable stager. But this should hopefully help you to know how to adjust your messaging to the target client. How to determine your client's temperament type. All right, in expressive, you want to adjust your messaging to meet your client's temperament. Share how great their house will look when it's staged. They're all about the visual. May have a lot of excess they need to pack up and remove. The drivers share the bottom line return on investment for these clients. What's the ROI they can expect? When you stage your house, statistics say that it can be listed at a higher price than when it's not staged. You need to talk to your real estate agent about your pricing, but that's what we know based on our statistics. They don't want all the details. They just want a plan they can implement or hire you to do the work. That's even better for them. I mean, you'll do this? Great. I don't have to handle anything? Great. Just let me know when it's finished. That's all they care about. In analytical, provide a specific action plan, provide statistics and data, and they like a lot of information. And they're not quick decision makers. And amiables provide specifics and make sure to offer help. They want minimal disruption to their life and family. And this is really key. They like knowing you're available to them during the process and after. After the staging is completed, if they have any questions, they want to know that you're available to them. One of the things that amiables hate is somebody that blows in, pretends to be your friend, and then you never hear from them again once you paid money for whatever service or product they're offering. They can't stand that. So an amiable wants to know that you're available. You really do care about them, and we do. We care about our clients, so that you're available to them if they have questions or any concerns or need help, or even after the sale, if they contact you, be available. Otherwise, they're going to put you in that category of, oh, they just faked that they really cared about me and they really weren't sincere. Because, people will lead you to people that need you, and all of your clients can lead you to referrals. So make sure that you make yourself available to the amiable after it's done. They may not ever call you, but just knowing that you're available gives them a sense of security. All right, let's talk about pricing. Consultations are priced by property size and the time it takes you to complete. 93 square meters per hour is your goal. Okay, so you should be able to get through a 93 square meter property in an hour in a consultation, meeting the client at the house, at the property, establishing rapport, going through, going back, sharing the verbal recommendations. It shouldn't take you more than an hour because that's just not that big of a property. And of course, I know there's always exceptions if there's just a ton to tell them. But listen, if there's a really cluttered room, like a kid's bedroom, I don't go, oh, you need to remove the socks, remove the shoes, remove the books, remove the video games, basically be like, get rid of everything except I want to see the bed, the desk, and a nightstand. Everything else needs to be packed up and put away. So that took me 15 seconds to say versus, 3 minutes to go through every single thing in the room that has to be removed. So you need to practice, and you can do this in your own property. Pretend that you're selling and go through and time yourself. But 93 square meters per hour is your goal, because this works with the financial part of how we charge. When asking a seller about the property, find out about the finished square meter size. Here where I live, we've got basements. Some of them are not finished. So I'm not going to stage an unfinished basement. So I don't care about that square footage. For ours, it's square footage in time. Yours is square meters. So we're 1,000 square feet an hour, or 93 square meters per hour is your goal. If your hourly rate then is 100 euro per hour, and it's a 188 meter square property, which is about 2,000 square feet, that would be 2 hours of your time, or 2 times 100 euro, or 200 euro would be your fee. And you'd come up, you wouldn't calculate all this in your out loud with the client. Okay, well your house is 188 meters, and I charge 100, per hour, and I can do half your house in an hour, so it's going to take me 2 hours. So that would be you won't say all that. You're just going to give them one price. Okay, but that's how you calculate it, and you need to practice as you hit that target, 93 square meters per hour. And if it's taking you longer, you're either talking too much, or you're too slow, or whatever it is, and you're costing yourself money, because other stagers can do it according to this formula. And if you price yourself too high, you're not going to get hired. So this formula works. Practice until you get it right. And large homes that are, I can use square footage, 15,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet, or anything above like 5,000 square feet, the formula stops working, because it's really based on a large square footage property or square meter property could have big hallways or just really massive living room, but there isn't a ton more to tell them. It's just a larger space, versus maybe there is a property that has 26 rooms. And so that is going to take you a long time. So just kind of keep that in mind, and you'll get more experience to understand how to price that if you do get one of those giant properties. Let's talk about income. How can you make income from consultations, which is the whole goal? The whole reason why we're teaching this to you is so you can make money off of another service that a lot of you are not implementing right now. You're not doing consultations because you never were taught how, or didn't realize the power behind them, or maybe you thought, well, I just really like doing the hands-on and the vacant staging, not realizing this is a whole avenue of income for you. And it's easy money, honestly. When I go into a consultation, I feel like I'm telling people things that they really already know they should be doing, but they're so overwhelmed with the thought of moving, they just really need a plan of action. So I'm telling them to make their beds, close the toilet, clean, move the clutter out of the way, pick up the toys, and then we get into the rearrangement and paint colors and so forth, which they wouldn't be able to figure out on their own. But a lot of the stuff that I share, I'm thinking like, I can't believe I get paid to tell people this. So it is great money. It's almost 100% profitable because you don't have a lot of overhead related to a consultation. So let's talk about making 50,000 euro a year doing consultation. So I'm going to show 125 euro per hour, for example, only. So your price will vary. We're going to have you working 4 days a week for math. That's $1,000 a week to make $50,000 a year. And I'm giving you 2 weeks off for vacation, even though 50,000 euro, even though I know you guys take more vacation. I envy Europeans that take the whole month of August and so forth. I think that's a wonderful tradition. But just for math, I just didn't make it easy. So to make 50,000 a year, and there's 50 weeks in a year, if I take 2 weeks off for vacation, that's 1,000 euros a week in order to make 50,000 euro. I keep saying dollars, euro per year. Okay, that's a lot of money. So you divide 1,000 by 4, you need 250 euro per day to make your 50,000 euro per year. What can I do as a stager to make 250 euro a day? I could do a consultation at 250 euro. So that would be a property that's about a 220 square meter property. Or, if it's a smaller property, you do 2 of those small properties in a day, but you could make 250 euro in a day as a stager doing consultations. Couldn't you? You could. Hope you're saying I agree. In this example, that's 1 consultation at 250 euro. All right, so I'm doing 4 of those per week, or 16 in a month, which is not a lot. And that's 2 to 2.5 hours per consultation on average we find it takes to prepare for a house that is, or a property that is the 2,500 square feet, or the roughly 200 something square meters. That's an average property in this example. So again, 1,000 square feet per hour, or your 93 square meters per hour. So if the property is 2 to 2.5 times that. That's how long it's going to take you to do an average consultation. That's 8 to 10 hours per week, which is part-time, which is the whole point of that, pointing this out here. That's part-time to make what for many people is a full-time income. Because we're paid according to the property, which I already shared, we're paid differently than a regular JOB, which is why we don't tell people that I make X amount per hour, because it'll freak them out. But this is on par with what a photographer gets, what a video person gets, what the lender makes, what the title rep, whoever's involved in the transactions of selling and buying real estate where you live, what the agent makes. They get a commission. So this is all on par with that. And we're not paid, this is nothing compared to what some of the other people are making that are tied to the sale of the home. The question is, how many real estate agents or sellers will it take to hit this number? Well, you have a goal. Start talking to agents until you have 16 that are using you one time a month, which is to me a lot easier to find. I could find 16 real estate agents in my market here that will use me once a month to do a consultation. I could do that. It's a lot easier for me to find than one that's going to use me 16 times a month, right? So it's easy, it's just math. So you need 8 agents that use you twice a month, 4 agents that use you 4 times a month, 16 that use you once a month, 32 that use you once every other month. That's just 6 times a year that somebody's calling you to do a consultation. So it's just a numbers game. And so you start talking to people and marketing yourself to the real estate agents or the homeowners with the goal of 16 per month. And the reason we're focused on the real estate agent piece of it is because an agent that understands and gets the idea of the staging can help them in their business to secure listings and get them sold at a better price and establish themselves as the go-to agent. They're going to see the benefit of that. They're going to use you over and over and over and over again. And I have agents that have used me for over a decade because of our relationship and the trust, and because I'm a key aspect to their business model. That's what we want. It could be an investor, it could be a builder, etc. So now I need 16 that are one time a month or whatever it is. Now, but I have a number, I have a target. So you just start talking to people knowing that you're going to hear no's. That's part of marketing. Doesn't matter if you hear a no, you're then one step closer to a yes. I'm just looking for the yeses. And I'm going to keep marketing myself until I have the volume I want to support my 16 per month. Now let's talk about making 100,000 euro. That's 2,000 euro per week. Again, working 4 days a week, I need 500 euro per day. That's 16 to 20 hours per week at 125 euro per hour. Again, that's part-time hours to make a huge, a 6-figure income. That's huge. What can I do to earn 500 euro a day as a home stager? I can do 2 consultations at 250. I could do 4 consultations at 125. I've done 3 or 4 consultations in a day that you knock them out. They're only an hour. At 125, that's an hour of your time, right? You're only, 4 to 6 hours out working with the consultations. It's just a matter of lining up all that volume. So this is not the hard part. It's the difficult part. The challenging part is the marketing to get that volume of business. 2 consultations a day or 8 per week equals 32 per month. A little bit more challenging than 16, or 1 consultation can lead to a hands-on follow-up. So at the end of all of the examples of how to do a consultation, there was the opportunity to do a phase 2 follow-up, right? So you do a consultation for a homeowner, they need you to come back to help them. At the very least, it's going to be 1 more hour of your time to do fine-tuning. And then when they need you to actually help set the scene or bring things back, it could be 2 to 8 hours of additional time. It just really depends on what you're doing for them. So that's why you need to plant the seed with your clients that when I come back, I can do these things for you. One of the services we offer is a hands-on follow-up. These are the things we can do. Educate them. Because to me, it's much easier to work with my 16 people versus having to go find 16 more new people. And of course, not every consultation will lead to a follow-up. But I bet you can convert at least 50% of them, if not more, by letting them know what you can do in the follow-up. You make more money from the seller, or you can do 2 1,000 euro net staging projects, occupied or vacant, hands-on or vacant. That's 1 per week. Do 2 of those. So that means you have 8 projects per month in order to hit 100,000 euro at 1,000 net staging project. So you can add on services instead of having to find 16 more clients. You can choose to do consultations and do a mix. So maybe you do, instead of doing, 32 consultations to get there, maybe you do a mix of 16 consultations and you also have some occupied and vacant hands-on. So you mix it up. But the great thing about consultations is you don't need, for the most part, you don't need to have furniture and accessories because you're using what the homeowner has and working with what they have. And then there are times that they do need to have an addition of stuff, but we're not talking usually big couches and so forth. It's usually artwork and decor is usually what they need to have come back in. And of course, you have a partner in Cubics that if they do need furniture, you can bring props in. So there's ways you can get around it where you're not having to have, trucks and storage and all these different things to have to bring in to the property. And so it can be very lucrative because there's not a ton of overhead expenses related to this aspect of a staging business. Remember, time is money. You don't get paid for inefficiency. So again, practice how to do consultations. Price according to what your market will bear. If you're slow, you don't get to charge more because you're slow. You need to be where the market will bear in order to get the business. As you gain experience, you'll get faster at consultations and more efficient because you'll know the process and so forth. I remember the first 5 consultations I did, all 5 properties were extremely different. I was scared when I went in. I thought, am I going to know what to say? Are they going to listen to me? And I had a little handout I had printed off that if I go blank and I can't think of one thing to tell these people what to do, I'll be able to look at this document. It'll trigger some ideas for me. And the good news is I never needed to pull out the document. I got to people's homes, and because I had done my homework, I'd studied before and after pictures of staging pictures, which we're going to talk about, which is a great way to train your eye for staging. I could make recommendations. And of course, my confidence grew as I got experience, and that will grow with you as well. You're being paid for your expertise, and it's a great way to earn income. You're being paid for your ability to establish rapport successfully with a property owner and get them to listen to you. You're being paid for your ideas that are shared specifically with the homeowner. You're being paid for your ability to share information that can be sensitive or challenging using training and humor. I laugh a lot when I go to consultations, unless I'm dealing with a pure driver or analytical, but I do make jokes and so forth because, humor helps to lighten the situation, but I also come alongside them. So whatever they have going on in their home, I let them know I had to deal with the same thing when we moved. I have kids, I have a dog, I have a cat, whatever the thing is, you relate to them in a way that says, you know what, I'm not pointing my finger at you to get the work done. I'm coming alongside you and I'm putting my figurative arm across your shoulders and we're in this together. I'm here to help you. And so even if it's not true, I will say that I have the same thing going on when I moved. I can relate. Or I'll say, I just dealt with a client. We had to deal with the same thing. This is how we handled it. So they don't, again, feel like you're singling them out, and it helps establish rapport. Value-added services you can add on with consultations. You can do moving services, packing services. You can do photography, cleaning services for them, storage options, painting resources, and other. And of course, you have your resources available, and anybody that you partner with, if you're physically not going to do the photography or something like that, and you're giving referral business to these people, you should have an arrangement where you get a benefit back, a 10% referral fee back. And we are allowed to do that as home stagers because it doesn't violate any of the lending rules and so forth. We're not bribing a client. But anybody that you're giving referral business to in these avenues, that you're talking about them, set it up in the very beginning, the expectation, and maybe you have a painter you refer, and so then after 3 or 4 referrals, you say, you know what, hey, come and paint 3 rooms in my house or whatever it is. So you can also do that option versus cash. But establish this up front because we are a great referral resource for a lot of the other affiliate partners who wouldn't have the opportunity to engage with the homeowner like we do because they're not the first ones coming in. And so we have the opportunity to bring them business and vice versa. It should be back and forth, the referral business. We're going to take a look at pictures now. This is how we'll wrap up the day, looking at some before and after pictures. Use them as an exercise, so test yourself. What would I recommend to the seller? Look at the before picture. And so I'm going to go quickly through these, but there are so many pictures available on our sites, on lots of different websites, but just ask yourself, look at the before picture. What would I have done? What would I do to stage this room? And then talk it out loud. Then you look at the after picture and you're going to say, okay, I like everything that they did, or I would have done it differently, or I don't like what they did. I would have chosen this, or I didn't think of that, what they did. That's a really clever idea. So whatever it is, you're assessing it, and that's how you train your eye because there's only so many floor plans out there. And so once you've seen it in a photograph and then you witness it in a house you walk into, you'll already know what to do because you've seen the after picture. And so you can tell them the plan they need to implement. So photographs are super valuable as a training tool for us as stagers. All right, here's an entryway to a home, and it's very cluttered, right? So obviously we don't need to have all these jackets and so forth. What is the selling feature of this area of this property? Well, it's the built-in. It's the fact that there is a place to hang jackets and cubbies. Now it's just full of a bunch of stuff. We don't need to have all these things in here. This needs to go. Stuff on the windowsill needs to go. There's stuff on the floor. So just purge and leave a few things to highlight the fact that this is where you can hang jackets, have a hat, and some shoes. It's much better. Leaving it empty would be a mistake because it's just too stark. Now, you might not have chosen to have an apron and a tennis shoe. Maybe you would have picked a different jacket or something, but that's not, these aren't for sale. And the fact is, it highlights the fact that you can hang things here. Here's a little office space, and it's not bad. This stuff here, there's actually a fan deck from Sherwin-Williams here. I recognize some kid stuff. It just, it's kind of blah. It really could use some artwork, to be honest, but here's the after. So just by repositioning the desk, and then they brought a chair in from a different part of the house, this looks much more inviting than having it like this, just by repositioning, and a different chair because this one's kind of thrashed. Curtains for me would have come down. So in general, we want to remove the drapes, the doilies, the things like that, the fuss up, the frames, because staging is all about removing the layers, not keeping them in place. And this to me is grandma. And the windows are nicely, they're new windows. They have blinds. So this is just decorative. It's not functional. So it does not need to stay. Another little office space. So here it's just kind of messy. We kind of wonder, like, what are these steps to? What is this going on in here? This looks like a junk collector. So I love what happened in this after picture. Slight angle to the desk, cleaned it up, painted the stairs, and they turned this into kind of a kid's playroom area. So it was a functional space versus just a junk collector. So it looks much better. That artwork's too small. That's fine, and they added the plant for some height. This is the dining and the living room, and there's so much going on here. You can't even see the property. So this just needs to be decluttered. And then using the furniture that the homeowner has, like there's a chair here, couch. You'll see the after. Why is the TV on the floor? And people live in odd ways. And so here, making it look much better for buyers. Beautiful. What a great job of staging. Using what the homeowner had. This makes me laugh because you have this plant that's a real plant and it's trailing like real ivy, like a real wallpaper border. That's just terrible. That needs to go. Cluttered, all this clutter here, this thing. So there's just a lot to take in. So, and a buyer's going to notice everything, but they got furniture we can use, right? So I have a dining table I can use. I'm going to have this buffet. So why don't I just get rid of all the, tell them to pack up all the rest of the stuff, and you'll see the after. It's their table and their buffet and even their chairs. So the stager brought in chair covers. Added the area rug, I believe. Oh, it looks like they actually ripped up their carpeting and have hardwood floors, which is really nice. So the rug is here. This is the seller's furniture, and then the lamps and the artwork were brought in by the staging company to give it more of a contemporary feel. So it's beautiful. I love this, the outcome. And this is what I'm talking about as an example. Artwork that has a light matting behind it. So if this wall were dark and you had these white prints, it will help brighten up the wall. And so in this example, it just makes it feel real clean because it kind of matches with the moldings and so forth versus this. You didn't even notice really the moldings because there was so much chaos visually. This person, I can tell an older person lives here, and this is an example where they say we're not going to paint. They don't have the budget for it. We need to take some of the patterns away, neutralize, and rearrange because the shades, balloon shades, no, or the valances, these need to go. She's got beautiful updated windows. That's the selling feature, not the fabric. This is a decorative or design element, not for staging. So staging is depersonalizing. Decorating a design is personalizing. So they've decorated by adding in these things that they liked. Now they need time to go because the buyers don't want to see this. She has chair, 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 couch, chair, end table. So there's a lot of little pieces around here. So let's just rearrange, simplify. Put the couch on this side, because this is a throughway to another part of the house, versus this is just goes to the window. You can still access the bay window, but you're not having to walk through here to get to the dining room. And then just kept a couple of the chairs, simplified. The mantle had little tiny things on it here, and the sconces were kind of dated, so these need to go. And then they just added, plants and then updated the sconces. Looks much better. Actually, did they just put little... All they did was they put little shades on top of it to modernize them. These little black shades, that's all they did. This is a recent project we just did here in Denver, and I'm always shocked sometimes when I walk into properties. This is a $1.2 million property, which is a high-end property where we live. And I know that they're, moving and so forth, but this is the stuff that's here is not really because they're moving. You can see some boxes and so forth, but just this is how they live. This is how they live. So I'm always a little shocked when I see such chaos. 2 little kids, husband and wife. And so anyhow, here's the before. So we did a consultation, and then we came back and did a hands-on follow-up and brought some accessories, and we did bring some furniture in too. For the most part, is like they have to pack up and remove. So here's the after. What a huge difference. Did you even notice that the floors were travertine before, which is a nice flooring? You couldn't even see the selling feature. You can't sell it when you can't see it. And then the window, window bench, everything's been cleared off so I can breathe. It's simplified. Buyers can appreciate the square footage and the space. This is another house we just completed recently. Again, over $1 million property, a divorce situation. So often in those situations, some of the key furniture is gone. In this case, their sofa's missing. She took the living room furniture, and those 2 pieces came out of a den. And so, I thought, well, we can work with the chairs, and we have the rug here we can work with. And this little end table was useful, and it had some artwork. So we ended up bringing in a couch and artwork. This is our stuff here and here. Our end table and lamp, that's their artwork we moved from another part of the house because it was much better. It was on a dark blue wall, which just sort of absorbed it right in. You couldn't even see it. Here it looks really amazing on this painted wall. So we're grayish, agreeable gray probably. So what a difference to go from this to that. This is also, and next to that room, this little sunroom, that back stretcher, the kids' pictures, all these plants and stuff like that. There's 2 big trees here and a bunch of other plants that were half dead. And so, again, using what the homeowner had, here's the after. That's their settee, broken, was in 2 pieces here. So we just kept it like that little table in between and set it up as like a little reading area. They didn't have the budget for us to bring additional furniture in here. I put the trees at the back corners versus at the front because they still wanted their plants. But this is a very nice setting for buyers. And that's their rug. This is a house, older people live here. This couch must have been from the 1970s, and they just probably never got rid of it. And so that oak front, 80s, 70s, whatever it is. Anyway, it's old. It's not attractive, not on trend. And then they have these dark leather accent chairs. And so, again, using what the homeowner has and then giving them a plan and then bringing in some things in the follow-up, hands-on, phase 2 follow-up. This is their trunk, their couch, their chairs, pillows. Is that their lamp? I think it's even their lamp. Yeah. No, I guess it's our lamp. That lamp went somewhere. So lamps were brought in, their end tables, their trunk, their couch. And, just by bringing some updated artwork and some updated accessories, it helped give the illusion that this house was more updated. And because they weren't going to get rid of this couch, they didn't have budget to rent furniture. So this is pretty typical for a consultation follow-up that you're just bringing accessories and stuff and just to help add some updated colors, add some layers to make it more visually appealing for buyers. This is the same house. So they had this couch and tables and so forth. That thing, the metal sculpture tree, just is not doing anything for that wall or for this room for that matter. Here's the after. So kept their pieces, accent tables brought in, lamps, different artwork that coordinates. And now this set that was kind of dated fabric with the blue and the gold, it ties in with the artwork and it all works. And this house sold right away. After it'd been on the market for like 6 months, it hadn't sold, and they got an offer once we staged it. This was actually a class project I taught, and it was in the basement of a property, so they had a game room. And so this is the pool table, and the selling feature is the fact that there are built-ins, and look at all these books. And I had actually instructed the homeowner to please pack up at least 50% of those before we got there as a class, because it wasn't a huge class, and they didn't do anything. So this happened in a matter of about an hour, hour and a half. This is what we were able to accomplish. And set the scene with the shelves. And I would have done more as far as specifically arranging and so forth had we had more time. But again, this house actually sold right away too, which was great. But just lightening that load visually, I mean, to me, this is overwhelming. And buyers are going to be like, what books do they read? Or they just feel like, oh my gosh, there's so much. There's just not any room for my stuff. So you have to lighten the load and just set the scene. You're going to have to do every single shelf. You could do every other one, would be acceptable for staging as well. The bedroom in this house had an old antique bed, antique dresser, and then this thing was theirs. This went to a different bedroom that didn't have a bed, and then this one we just found the mattress, put the bed together, and this is all the homeowner's things. Different house, kids' room, guest room. So beanbag needs to go. This is in the middle of the room. Bed is great. The position from the doorway, the positioning I believe is fine. The desk is cute. So they just set the scene, took up the rug, probably used it someplace else, or just wanted to show off the floors. So that's subjective. You can put rugs down on wood floors. You can pull them up. The selling feature is the floor. So I'm not a big fan of covering a huge space in a small room with the rug. And I know people might disagree with me, but when the selling feature is the floor itself, I don't want to hide the whole thing with a big giant rug so that buyers think like, oh, what's underneath the rug? Is there damage? Are they hiding something? So a smaller rug probably would be okay, or there wasn't really even a need for it because it looks great without it. This looks to me like a boy's room based on the bed, comforter, and the debris here. You got the shoes, the components, the different stuff here. And so here's the after. Tidy it up. Now the bedding may not be a big fan if they're actually living there. That looks kind of girly to me, but it looks much better than this. So if that's all they have, you know what, that kid can live with it. Nobody's knowing that it's a boy's, that it's him in there because they depersonalize. They don't know whose house it is, but that looks much better for selling. An office. So again, lots of clutter on the floor. The diplomas need to go away. And then the desk itself needs to be tidied and any financial papers and stuff secured. So this is a property in actually Texas that was staged as a class. And there's the after. Much better presentation of the desk to angle it slightly in the corner. And then this bookshelf probably was on the other side of the room or somewhere that they ended up being able to use it here as a functional display piece. This is the house that I talked about earlier, the 1.2 million with all that clutter. This is their kitchen. So again, they live like this. They have, 40 utensils and 18 pots and pans and all the stuff sitting around. And here's the after. Now they only have 3 utensils hanging and like 6 pots and pans because that's a selling feature, but they cleared off the counter. And don't you just feel like you can go, gosh, I can actually appreciate the features of the kitchen. I didn't know there was granite or quartz. I didn't realize there was an apron sink. I didn't even see the stainless appliances because there was just so much clutter going on. It's hard to see the features of the room when it's so loaded up with stuff. Typical master bathroom. So you got the white cabinetry, which is really nice, but we have our stuff sitting all out because it's convenient. All this needs to go under the cabinets for showings and for staging, and only have what you absolutely need in the cabinet. So in the cabinet, like under my bathroom sink, I've got extra shampoos and lotions and hairspray and personal care products and stuff. And I don't want to throw them out because they were gifts and I might want them someday, but I haven't used them in 5 years, so I probably should throw them out, but then I feel guilty. I know I can donate them. But anyhow, the bottom line is whatever's in there that you don't use all the time, pack it up and then have your sellers put the things that they do need in here or in the drawers. Because they have to pack it up anyway, just pack them up early and then only keep what they need, but it has to be contained. And here's the after. Much nicer presentation. You got the towels rolled up. This looks so pretty compared to this. This is not going to excite a buyer. This will excite a buyer. Another bathroom. General guideline is to pull the rugs up. You want to showcase the floor because that's a selling feature. Plus this makes the floor look weird. Like I don't know if this is the floor, that's the floor. Is that a rug or is it brown? So pull the rugs up. They can hang one over the tub if they need to. And so in this case, different shower curtain that's updated. Set the scenes. They tied in the blue and the white. Little basket with towels. Looks much better. I generally leave the shower curtain open so people can see the shower head. And in a photograph, when it's open, if this towel wasn't there, it actually makes it look 2 feet bigger because you're actually not creating a wall here. That's just a personal preference. All right, and that is it for this webinar. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me at jenny@ihosp.com. That's the best way to reach me. You will be provided a test you're going to take, which is just to make sure you're paying attention. It'll take you through the 2 different sections. And once you complete that and send that to us, then you'll be given your designation and your logo as a consultation communication specialist. And then also be provided the resources I mentioned as far as the handouts and the examples of how to type up a report and handwrite. We have all of those available. You'll be given access to those once you complete the test and send it in successfully and pass, and we'll be sending you that information. So congratulations, everybody. You're now a certified consultation specialist. Consultation and communication course is done. Congratulations. Very happy for you. And I hope that this is a way that you're able to add to your income. That's the whole goal for consultations. And remember, consultations can be done on houses that are for sale, but they can also be done for remodeling, for updating, for color. So there's a lot of ways you can work with people and give them a specific advice on what they need to do in their properties that has nothing to do with selling a house. And it's money. Anytime you're sharing your ideas, you should be paid for that. And that's a consultation service. All right. Thanks, everybody. I look forward to hopefully seeing you in person at our conference or the European conference. Until then, you're listening to this. Stay safe and healthy. Please stay in contact. Make sure that you have found us all on our social media pages. We have our iHosp social media groups that's private, and also there's public, and we have the Home Staging Professionals group. So I hope you're all joining and becoming members of those, because we have got some great engagement on those groups and pages, and would love to have you participate as well. All right. Thanks, everybody. Great being with you. Love you all. Go out, stage, and be successful. Bye.